Okay, so we'll start our session now. So thank you very much for joining us this tea time. So today you are on a session called Supporting Disabled Students into Higher Education. As I said, please do put any questions you've got into the chat function. So who are we? We are the Higher Education Progression Partnership. We call it Hepp for short. And we are an organisation that is funded by both universities in Sheffield, so Sheffield Hallam and the University of Sheffield. And we're there to encourage more children, young people and adults to consider higher education. And we work in Barnsley, Doncaster, Rotherham, Sheffield and North East Derbyshire as well. I am Kelly Self and I am the project coordinator, and I support underrepresented groups into higher education. So that's care experienced students, young carer students, mature students and disabled students as well. And with me today, I've got colleagues who will introduce themselves as they go through, but we've got our funding partners, Sheffield Hallam University, the University of Sheffield, and also our partner college, Barnsley College, HE. Okay, so we'll just sort of talk you through what you're going to get covered in this session today while you're with us. So it's basically for you to understand about higher education is available to disabled students. There's a lot of support available for those young people, and also, you know, how we're going to talk about how parents and carers can support them as well. There's also the finance process, so the DSA, Disabled Student Allowance, will cover, and then sort of the jargon and how it is different from that school to the university, along with finding out, know how to support a disabled student when thinking about higher education. So I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague, Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Reaney and I'm the Higher Education Disability Advisor at Barnsley College University Centre. I know we get a longer name every time I say it, but we're now the University Centre at Barnsley College. So the first thing that I want to look at is to kind of unpack some of the myths around the jargon of disability. We call it disability. And I know that a lot of students and applicants aren't familiar with us using that phrase and expect to find additional learning support. And I've known students spend 4 years at university looking for additional learning support, but it doesn't exist. It's called disability. And that's because deliberately, here's a history lesson, back in 1995, when the Disability Discrimination Act came out, we really wanted students at university to be covered by that legislation. We wanted it to be illegal for somebody's health issues, mental health issues, anxieties, dyslexia. We wanted it to be illegal for universities not to take account of any of those issues. So the disability framework was broadened to be, as it says on the right, anyone who has any diagnosis that will interfere with how they study or how they will engage with their higher education course. So that includes if you're dyslexic, that includes if you have Asperger's or autism, it includes if you have anxieties or physical disabilities or health issues. It includes anything that will affect how a student's concentration lasts, how their pain levels are, where they can study, in what situations they'd feel uncomfortable. So now that we've got a broader definition of disability, there is no need for people to fear being included within that. When the Equality Act came out in 2010, the disability legislation became part of the Equality Act. So all of our students who you would know as being additional learning support students, all of those who need extra time, anxiety support, etc., they are all included legally by the legislation because of that word disability. So it's not something that will follow your learners outside university. It doesn't mean they're signing up to any kind of benefit or any kind of status in society. It is simply a working diagnosis, a working definition used within education and universities. Next slide, please. So it is about the language we use. So as our students and your learners move from school into university and start to prepare for that, they will notice a shift in the language. And if you're not prepared for that, then you might discount or not seek out the right departments for this disability provision. And it's really important to know how to navigate your way from the college and school words into the words used within universities. And it doesn't matter which university, it is all, we all do the same thing. So whichever university you go to, they will use the words that we've put together here. So the journey from school on the left-hand side of the screen is into universities. The words they use are on the right-hand side. So you'll find that there aren't SENCOs when you get into university, but there'll be disability advisors or disability coordinators. Slight phrasing difficulty difference in different universities, but the word disability will be in there. So additional learning support then becomes a disability service or a disability support service. It will have that word disability in it. The EHCP, which you're all familiar with as a report that outlines all of your support needs for your learners, that then becomes part of what we know as a needs assessment. And it's where a technical assessor, an assessment team assess what your student needs. So therefore, everything that would have been in the EHCP, including extra time and provision to work in a separate room, whatever is encompassed in that EHCP and whatever is really important to your learners will now be found within the needs assessment report. Dyslexia help and class support then might become student study coach support and mentor support. So that one-to-one study skills session is still there. It's not inside a lecture now, it'll be between lectures. It's usually outside a lecture, and it gives the student, the applicant, chance to work through how to prepare a piece of written work, how to say what I really want to say, how to do my referencing, and then a mentor would look at motivation, confidence, dealing with anxieties around lectures or around the busyness of college, of university. Then a learning plan, which your students will know about, becomes an essential study strategy, or as we call it, a reasonable adjustment report. So that those things that your tutors will need to know about how to teach your applicants, how to teach the student who has dyslexia and needs purple overlay, those students who need extra time in exams, those students who need a separate exam area, that's all included in our essential studies strategies. That's what goes out to the tutors. And then special education needs, never mentioned in university anymore, but they've become reasonable adjustments. And that phrase reasonable adjustments is really important because that's the legal phrase that is used to universities. Have you made reasonable adjustment for your new students? So remember, we're making a movement from some of the language that's used. It's not disappearing. It's all going to be there, but it's going to have some different phrases. I think one that's not on that I would like to mention is the word support, because so many times when I ask an applicant, and what support have you had previously? They'll say no support at all, but I've had a laptop and I need extra time and I need to be in a separate room. That's what we would call support. So that framework that your student needs when they get into uni is what we would call what support you would need. So it doesn't mean physical support. When we say, have you had support? If your student has had extra time for dyslexia, then that's the response. Yes, I've had extra time. There's such a lot of misunderstanding there that I think it's important to include that word. So all of the package of what your learners currently have is still there. You just have to look for it within a different framework of language and not be frightened of that different framework. All the study aids your students will need will be there. They're just wrapped up in different jargon, different words. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. My name's Justine and I work in the disability team at Sheffield Hallam University. And I'm just going to sort of fill out a little bit more about what Jackie's been explaining and sort of explain in more detail about what each of the support services do. All higher education will have a disability service, and as Jackie's already said, they might be called different things, they might have extra names on there, but all universities do have that service and do a very similar job, if not in a slightly different way. To access the service, you probably need to register with them, or at least let them know you're coming to university, and they'll need some sort of evidence of their diagnosis or working towards a diagnosis. So that's something that you can be doing before your young person starts at universities, getting that evidence together so that when they come to register, that they've got that and they can send that off without sort of them panicking and looking for it. Make a GP appointment and get the evidence if you've not got any. The other thing is go to open days, ask questions, because usually there is either a student support service or a disability service at open days, and that's a good way to find out what each particular university offers and how they offer it. We would encourage you to encourage your young people to contact the disability service before they start, not to in advance. We normally say about May time if they're starting this in the September, just so that all the sort of information about the student is on our records or on the university records. But if you've got any questions before that, then you're more than welcome to contact either one of us or the university that a young person's thinking of going to. I think we'll go on next slide, please. So who does that is a person that will be called a disability advisor or coordinator, and again each university will have a team of disability advisors. They may be called something different, and they may work slightly differently. At Sheffield Hallam we have college-based advisors, so course-based advisors. I think in some universities they may go more down the diagnosis or the condition, but each university is different, so find out who they are. I think the best way to find that information out is to Google the university and just add disability in that. Most universities will have some information on a website, and that's the best place to sort of first go and have a look and get a feel for what their support is. And that's all about getting prepared before you start university. And so, sorry, I wrote it down, but when you're trying to read and read at the same time, I'm better if I don't write it down. I don't know why I've done this. So what a disability advisor will do is will talk to you about your condition, what impacts it has on your learning, and then write up a document that will put those reasonable adjustments in place for you to go through university. As it says on the bottom, we'll also lead you through the DSA application, which is Disabled Student Allowances, but I'll chat about that in just a second. Next slide, please. So the type of support is a toolkit really of recommendations and adjustments that can be put in place so that you can achieve your potential whilst at university. They are personal to you, so and it's a conversation between yourself and a disability advisor, and depending on the course and your needs, they'll put together a document for that. At Sheffield Hallam, they're learning contracts, but different universities will have different names, but they'll all do the same thing. And it includes exam support, assistive technology, so that's software that you can have on your laptops that can support you with your writing or research, different deadlines to extensions. It might be that there's study skills help, mentor help. Each university does things slightly different, and some universities may go down, but everything is sort of supported through disabled student allowances. Some universities might have more of an inclusive offer where it's available to everyone. Again, have a look round before you're ready to start applying and choosing your university to see which you think is going to suit your needs best. And then we'll just move on to the DSA process. So disabled student allowances runs alongside, or it runs with whatever support you've got in your institution. So whatever university put in place, we'd always advise that you also apply for disabled student allowances, and you apply through your funding authority. So for the majority of students, it will be Student Finance England. And we would always recommend that you apply in February when you first apply for your core funding, so funding for your course. Apply for DSA. It is a long process, and it's not user friendly. It's quite a pain, but it is worth getting through it. So you'll apply. When you apply for your finance, send the disability evidence off for them to approve, and once it's approved, you'll get a letter asking you to book a study needs assessment. Now, study needs assessments can be done face-to-face or online, on the telephone, lots of different ways of doing those, and it says an assessment, but it's not. It's a chat for you to tell them what you need and for them to sort of recommend what university support you would need, because obviously for a lot of people they've not been to university before, so it's a two-way chat for you to get the right support. Once they've done that, they'll write up the report, they'll send it off to the funding authority, then you'll get a letter, and that will explain how you access your support. If at that point or at any point in the DSA process you get stuck, please do come back to the disability team and ask them to support you. A lot of students, because it's quite a long process, a lot of students do get stuck and then give up. Please don't. Please come and ask. Encourage your young people to come and ask if they are stuck. So that's sort of a quick overall of the different support at university. And I'm now going to hand over to Alison.
Thanks, Justine. So I'm Alison Jones, and I'm a Disability Transitions Officer working in the Disability and Dyslexia Support Service at Sheffield University. Right, so we've already heard quite a lot of examples in terms of some of the types of support that's available within higher education. So I always try and explain to students and potential applicants that there's kind of two routes to setting up all the support that's available at university. So there's support that comes through the higher education institution itself, so through the disability service. So there's some support that the disability advisor will be able to put in for students through the disability service. And then there's also the inclusive practice that's available across all universities. So inclusive practice is obviously really important. That should benefit all students at university, and it should mean that there's equality of access for all students across university in certain areas of practice within the university. So in terms of inclusive practice, that might be things like, so lots of universities now record their teaching sessions as standards, so students can listen to the lecture material again to support them with their note taking, or to support them with their understanding of the lecture content, for example. So that's really important support for students where note taking might be a barrier. So that might be for students who feel anxious within the lecture, might lose focus. It might be for students with ADHD. So that's an important example of inclusive practice, and lots of universities have adopted that. In terms of reasonable adjustments, so that's where the disability advisor, like Justine said, would meet with the student to think about individual reasonable adjustments, so support that's put in place at the individual level for the student. So that's why it's really important that students have that appointment and discussion with an advisor to work out what individual support needs to be in place for them. In terms of what that looks like, so we've already heard some examples of that. Obviously things like exam support is often the primary concern for a lot of students in terms of what information they're going to, in terms of what support they're going to access through the university. But that's really useful for us because a lot of students will often be really, will prioritise getting in place their exam support. And then when they contact us as a service, they then find out about all the other types of support that's available as well. Jackie talked about learning support plans, learning contracts. Again, that is a reasonable adjustment that the disability service can put in place to ensure that a student's academic department has information about what some of the barriers might be for students within education. And then that's how, as a disability service, we can advise academic departments on how to support students who are on their course. So that's really important information. Obviously, there's lots of students at university with lots of different needs. And that's how we can support departments to support students at university. And then a lot of higher educations have their own packages of assistive technology. So there's lots of assistive technology now to support students at university. So that might be about supporting students to produce their written work. So it might be about mind mapping to support students with planning their assignments. It might be text out, read and write, so that students can listen to web pages, to PDF files to support them with their reading. So a lot of it's about providing a multi-sensory approach to reading and learning. Sorry, I haven't finished yet. So yeah, so in terms of that kind of two-route approach to accessing support, to have full access, it's important that students make contact with the disability service to access what's available within the university, whether that's obviously in terms of reasonable adjustments, or it might be about, getting full information about the inclusive practice that's available. But then you've also got the funded support that students can apply for. So in terms of the funded support, in terms of DSA, obviously Justine's just explained that to us. So students would independently apply for DSA, hopefully before they start university, so that once they start university, they arrive at university with their full package of support in place through DSA. But we can, as a disability service, we can support students through the DSA process as well if they come across any challenges. So that's the main type of funded support. So where there's a cost attached to providing support, where a student is eligible for DSA, the expectation is that support would be funded through DSA. Now, for degree apprenticeship students who are not eligible to apply for DSA, that doesn't mean that students don't have access to support in the same way that students who don't have a home status, home fee status, so international students, it doesn't mean that those students are not eligible for support at university. It just means that in terms of the funding, it might be that the university, for example, would look to provide some of the support that would usually come through DSA. Again, there'll be some differences across universities in terms of what's available, but again, that's why it's important that students do their research, applicants do their research and find out about the university funding that's available. Okay, I'm all right for the next slide. Okay, so in terms of parents and carers, so we've had to think about how obviously in terms of you'll be central to supporting your young people to prepare for university and to make the transition to go into university. So we know that going to university is potentially a huge transition for any student, and we also know that for disabled applicants and new students there might be additional challenges, and there might be additional preparation. So obviously, you know, our key message today would be, you know, an important aspect of that preparation is preparing to access support. So it's going through the process to make sure that both university support and disabled student allowances support is in place. So both of those things can be potentially put in place before, or certainly agreed upon before a student has even started university. And where it's important for students to have support in place at university, then doing their research, like Justine said, attending open days and finding out about what support is available is really important in terms of preparing for university. So preparing to go to the right university for that individual student. So there's a shift from there's often a shift from parents and carers being central in setting up support for their young people within college. So we know that parents often take the lead on discussing the support needs with college, with the SENCO, to make sure that support's in place. Now, what we try and encourage is that young people, as they prepare for university, part of the preparation is learning how to self-advocate, is learning how to have some discussion around them, around how they identify in terms of being a disabled student and what that means in terms of what the barriers might be at university, and then starting to think about what support they've had in place in previous education, what's been useful. So that's all really useful information to share with the disability service. And although as an applicant might attend their needs assessment appointment, they might attend their disability advisor appointment with a parent or with a carer or supporter, but once the student's at university, most of that contact then will be directly with the individual student. As universities, we don't have consent, we don't have the option to share information directly with parents and carers. So it's really important that young people arrive at university being able to self-advocate for themselves. So there's a real shift towards students becoming more independent around having those conversations. We encourage applicants to share disability information on their UCAS form and to have direct contact with the disability service early on. So in terms of sharing information on the UCAS form, so there's a section where applicants can say that they're considered to be a disabled student. There's no negative to ticking that box. I think some applicants still worry about ticking that box, about sharing that information about themselves at the application stage. There is no negative. The only way that a student's place at university is considered is through their academic suitability, and that's the same for any student. What that information does do is, if a student has shared information with UCAS, it then means that the university's disability service can access contact details for a disabled student from their admissions team, and that means then that we can make direct contact with applicants. So for example, at Sheffield, we contact all applicants who have shared disability information around May time. So it's just to kind of prompt anybody, just to prompt applicants to get in touch with us. And we do encourage contact with the disability service early on. So we're encouraging that from May, but some applicants will have contact with us before then. Some types of support do take some time to put in place. So again, if it's important to a student that they have support in place from day one of their course, it's really important that they're having contact with us around kind of early summertime to arrange that. And if a student applies to university through clearing, then we encourage the student to contact the university's disability service directly, because we won't necessarily access that information in time to be able to start discussing a student's support needs before they arrive at university. Okay, I'm okay for the next slide. Okay, so preparing for university. So this is just a bit of a checklist of things that you might want to be aware of and to work through. So as we said, we encourage early contact with the Disability Service to start discussing support. There might be a registration form to complete. So that's about providing the university, the Disability Service, with some early information, so that, for example, if the Disability Service has a triage system in place, then it's making sure that the Disability Service knows who to contact, what information to provide at an early stage. Gather the disability evidence that will be needed. So as Justine said, most universities will require some form of evidence, and certainly for disabled student allowances, diagnostic evidence will be needed to confirm eligibility for DSA. And there's a website there which gives some information about the type of evidence. That is quite specific to Sheffield Uni, but in terms of DSA, that would apply to most applicants. Research and apply for DSA. So complete an application form. The system opens to apply for DSA at the same time. So it's the same system as applying for other student finance, so tuition fee loans, maintenance loans, general finance. So that system usually opens end of February, beginning of March time. So yeah, so apply for DSA, preferably kind of sooner rather than later in terms of when that application system opens, because if an applicant does come across any problems with their application, so if they haven't provided adequate evidence, for example, that can really slow things down. You know, things can kind of get overlooked, get missed. So yeah, ideally apply around that March time. So gather disability evidence for then, so that the applicant can apply, and then go through that process of attending the study needs assessment, ordering equipment, and attending training for equipment before arriving at university. In terms of transition events, so lots of universities will have a programme of transition events and activities taking place over the summer. So like Justine said, you know, research or search for the Disability Service for your young person's chosen universities and find out what's being delivered, or contact the Disability Service directly and ask what timetable of activities will be in place either over the summer or at the start of the semester to support students transition into university. If required, so if an individual student is going to need any accommodation adjustments, then it's important that when the applicant makes their application for university, that they clearly state, when they make the application for university owned accommodation, that they clearly state on that application what their support needs will be within accommodation. So whether that's a death alert system, or whether a student needs an ensuite bathroom, for example. So whatever it is that an applicant thinks they might need at university, for that information to go into the accommodation application, so that can then be considered by accommodation services. And then preparation for independent living. So we know that for individuals that will mean different things, and there will be and applicants will need to potentially go at their own pace in terms of how they prepare for independent living. But you know, there are some things that it's really useful if students are able to do when they arrive at university. So things like, you know, doing a food shop, or if that's overwhelming for some students to go into a supermarket and do a food shop, it might be doing things like setting up, you know, a favourite section within through an online supermarket account, so that, you know, students just have some idea about what some of the key things they'll need each week at university. Or it might be around, you know, ideally maybe being able to make a couple of different meals over the week. So it's just thinking about, for your young person, what is going to be some of the key things that they learn, some of the key skills they learn before going to university, because essentially students at university, whether they're in university owned accommodation or not, they're pretty much independent. You know, they're independent adults at university. So I often encourage applicants to think about university and moving away from home in the same way that they would if they were moving away from home for a job and moving, you know, to live in private accommodation. Some of those skills that are required will be the same. It's, you know, it's no different really in terms of moving towards independent living. So preparation is the key, really. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Justine, Jackie and Alison. So you've heard quite a lot of information there. We have, as I said, recorded this and we have got the slides, so we will be sending them out early next week so that you've got all of that information. Just moving on, here's lots of information for what you've heard today from both funding partners. There is information on their university web pages to be able to help you with anything that you need, and as well as our own Hepp website. This is our parent and carer section, but there is also a disabled students section that's got resources as well. So we have got our own Hepp Hub, as I said, and that has an awful lot of information on it to help people with key information to look at. So there is, as I said, a resource for students, so disabled students. So it's called Here For You. We are in the process of updating that and rebranding it, but the information in there, the key information, is still relevant. So it's worth downloading that. And if you ever do want a copy, you can obviously email us in and we can send one out to you. As I said, that is our hepp.ac.uk, and there is also case studies on there of students that are currently studying at higher education institutions who have gone through lots of different situations and things that they talk about their disability and how it's affected them and what support they've received, which can be really helpful and comforting, obviously, to hear about other students out there that have gone through the process. So please do go down there. What we would like for you to do as well is to take away is, that higher education is accessible for disabled students. There is an awful lot of support available, and support is personalised to your young person's needs. So it's all about going and speaking to colleagues that are on here today, but also where you go and research institutions. We do recommend that you research the institution that you want to, you're looking at going to, because as we've said throughout that session, yes, everything, every institution will have different support available, but it's obviously dependent on what your individual needs are. So what that young person's individual needs are. We do say disclosure as early as possible. With DSA, that can sometimes take a bit longer, depending on the year that you apply, depending on what the needs are for that young person. So the earlier you can disclose that, the earlier you can that young person can access that support within that institution. So, it's really important to do that. And it's really important to disclose as well. For some students, there is that, I don't want to do that. But actually, it's there to support you to make sure that their journey is, as easy as possible throughout their time studying. As we said, each higher education establishment has that designated dedicated team to support students. So please do, speak to them, reach out to them, and any questions that you've got, if you can't find out that information, we are here as Hepp, as an organisation, to do that. We can triage and look at different questions, and what we can't answer, we just go and speak to colleagues. And if that's not colleagues, if it's about some other institution, please just ask us, because we will be able to hopefully find some information, or someone will know something. So please don't sit on it, because that's worse. We want you to feel comfortable and have that information. As we said, any words, descriptions you're unsure about, just ask. Like we said, the language is different, and that can sometimes throw people and be quite worrying, scary, whatever, but generally a lot of these things mean the same thing, or you know what they mean. It's just because they're in a different way. So as we say, please do ask. And finally, a disability within higher education is anyone who has any diagnosis which interferes with how they study or engage with their higher education course. If you've got any thoughts, or is this or isn't it, please, again, just ask, just talk to people, because the idea is that institutions want students to get along as easy as possible through their journey through higher education. They want them to, feel settled and comfortable, because at the end of the day, they want them to get to the end of their journey and progress on to, careers. So we're now going to just put up some little polls. There's 2 questions that we just would like you to answer that would be really, really helpful for us. So my colleague's just going to put them on the screen. They will go into the chat function, but please do answer them, because they help us when we're doing our work to support students and support you as parents and carers as well. So it'd be really helpful if you can take a few seconds, well, sort of a minute, to just fill those out. But in the meantime, if there are any questions, we will take them now. I will put the next slide up because, that's got our contact details. But as I said, we will be sending the slides out, so you will have those email addresses and websites. But if you've got any questions now that you'd like to ask, I will take those questions. I'll just bring up the chat function and see if there is any questions in there. Bear with me. I think people are just writing. I can see some. As I said, sometimes you need to digest what you've taken in. So, the questions might be later on. So we've got a question here. My son had a dyslexia assessment when he was aged 9. Does he need to do another one for evidence?
I can answer that. This is Jackie speaking from Barnsley College University Centre. Acceptable by Student Finance England is a report that's been done at secondary level, so in college or at sixth form, or a full report that's been done earlier on, which would be about maybe 20 pages long. You would know if it was a full report. Generally, primary school ones are not acceptable, and I wouldn't want anyone to go down the route of submitting something and then 3-4 weeks later they get back from Student Finance England, please revisit this because it doesn't satisfy our requirements. But if it's been done at secondary, yes. If it's been done earlier than secondary, I would think that is, not. As a child with dyslexia, your cognitive processes aren't going to settle down into the adult profile of dyslexia. So I think it's really important to get that updated if you feel you can do.
Thank you. Someone else is now answering question. Is there any further questions that you've got at this time? Please, doesn't matter how, you might not think it's as important, but actually any question is important, and it actually might help other people in the room. No, it looks like we've obviously answered everything we can at this time in terms of through the session. So we will, you are now, thank you so much for attending. We hope that this has been helpful to you. And obviously you are free to go, and we will send out all this information to you so you've got it to hand. And please do take a look at the websites and then find out, do some research if your young people are looking to go, and go and visit them. Go and visit the institutions is really, really key, because you'll find out more about what their services offer. Thank you.